Welcome to the Third and Central podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the newly ranked Louisville baseball program. After picking up 6 wins since we last talked, we're up to 7 wins in a row after a thriller with Morehead State, a sweep of Illinois, Chicago, and a couple lopsided victories over Lipscomb and Oakland. We are brought to you tonight by energy drinks as we are recording early in the morning on Thursday after the Oakland game just wrapped up. We will cover all those games here in just a few minutes and then kind of look ahead because, believe it or not, it's time for ACC baseball. And it feels like the season just started a couple weeks ago, which I guess it did. But it's hard to believe that North Carolina's coming in this weekend. Before we hop into that, Terry, I know you've been at the ballpark for all of this, all the action at Jim Patterson Stadium over this long homestand. We were up there on Sunday, and the weather has been just absolutely beautiful. I don't know what we've done to deserve this in March, but whatever it is, I'm here for it. But before we hop into all that, how is everything going, and how's everything been at Jim Patterson Stadium lately?
Yeah, you said it, man. The weather has been outstanding. I mean, I had shorts on at the ballpark yesterday, and it was, you can't ask for anything more than that in, early mid-March. And so, yeah, the boys are playing well. The weather's been good, and I mean, that's all you can ask for right now. They're hot coming in, at the right time as we get ready to start conference play. The hitting's been great. The pitching is coming along really nicely, and so at this point in the season, everything's pointing heading in the right direction, it seems like.
No, and you're right. I think if you would have said before the season started that, hey, 16 games in, as we're preparing for North Carolina, that this team was going to be 14-2, I would have taken that with every ounce in my body. There's nobody would bat an eye at that. So I think looking back, just recapping the first couple weeks, the first 16 games, you couldn't ask for a better start to the season, especially the way we started down in the Shriners College Showdown. Tough schedule. Played a couple of the non-conference opponents that we've seen here at Jim Patterson, but to be 14-2, I mean, you got to go out and play the game. I mean, look at some of these other schools around the country. Texas A&M, I think they've already got 6 or 7 losses. They were the number 1 team going into the season. So it doesn't matter who's in the dugout. You still got to go play the game, and Louisville has done that and done that very well. Where we are at this point in the season, to be ranked by Baseball America at 25th, I think it's a testament to just this team's ability to just be resilient. We talked about that a lot last time we recorded, which is what we saw out of the game against Morehead State, which I think myself and many others, the game was pretty much over, right? I mean, Louisville was down 8-5 with 1 out left in the game and no runners on base. And you think, okay, 1 pitch and this thing's over with. And the next thing you know, you get a home run from Matt Klein. You get one batter later, Jake Monroe hits a home run. So, okay, so now we were 8-5. Now it's 8-7. A couple hits, couple walks later, and Kamayo Neighbors draws a bases-loaded walk to force extra innings. And then one of the heroes from the previous inning, Jake Monroe, who delivered the home run to get us within 1, he answers again like he's done all season long. He has just been incredible in the first 16 games of the season. Hit a walk-off single to score Alisea to beat Morehead. And I was talking to people after the game. I don't know if it was you or someone else. I said, if this team doesn't stop this stuff, I'm going to have to get put on blood pressure medicine. But nonetheless, it was an exciting game. But it was an exciting game. Obviously, glad we came back and won. I think it just goes back to what we've talked about. Just this team, how resilient they've been. They're down to their final strike and come back and win. Just kind of walk us through that. What was the? I don't know how many people were left. Probably not a ton left at the ballpark at that moment. But kind of what was that like as another walk-off win for the Cardiac Cards?
Yeah, so, just real quick, when you're talking about Cardiac Cards, so after that game was over, one of the things I did, I came home and I looked up the win probability during the game of what it was at that point when Matt Klein came up to bat. with the 2 outs down 3. So Morehead State was at a 99.4% chance to win the game at that moment. So I also looked back earlier in the year. Louisville has 3 different times during this year come back and won games where the opponent was at a greater than 90% chance to win the game. That's unreal at, just 16 games into the schedule. Coach Mack continues to talk about it. The guys talk about it. You mentioned it again, the resiliency. I asked Coach Mack tonight, tell me some things that you've learned about this ball club that you did not know before the season started. I know it's 16 games in, and there's still much more to go, and you've probably got some better opponents coming for sure. But what are some of the things that you have learned about this group? And that's the first thing you went to. Just, there's talent there. You know that they can do it. But will they do it when the time comes? And these boys have answered the call over and over and over again. And it's awesome. I will tell you that night, the ballpark had emptied out a little bit for sure. There's no doubt about that. And, as you well know, not massive crowds at some of these midweeks, especially early in the year when the weather's not amazing. But we're doing anything we can, right? As the rally starts coming, all right, I'm standing in this same position. I was kind of down in a crouch up in my seat. So, all right, next batter, I'm in the crouch too. Next batter, I'm in the crouch. I did stand up. I had a parent tell me, what are you doing back in the crouch? So, we're just trying to do anything we can, right, to feel like you have a little bit of a part of keeping that rally going. But the guys on the field, man, it was fun to see they were locked in. Unfortunately for the kid from Morehead, he just seemed to run out of gas. And he was dominant, to be honest, out of the bullpen. A local kid from Eastern High School here in town, so I'm sure that was a big moment for him there to get to pitch in front of his family. I believe he's a freshman also, so Eastern's turned out a lot of talent. We're gonna get a kid from there coming up this coming year. Carson Shee's gonna come in, so but they, that he just ran out of gas, and it almost seemed like a little bit of a different approach there that ninth inning. We started taking some pitches. There were a lot of first and second pitch outs in the previous 3 or 4 innings. But after those 2 home runs that kind of got you back in it, the approach to the plate seemed to change a little bit more patient. And, once it got into the bullpen, that, a little bit deeper, that was when things seemed to turn for us.
Yeah, that was just a really fun game. And I think, and you talked about a lot of this, but one of the things that excited me the most about this team, and we talked about this a little bit before we recorded tonight, was this team is just deep. From top to bottom of the lineup. And every time that we need somebody to answer a call, they answer it. It's not the same, 1 or 2 guys every time. It's not like, okay, we've got to have player A or player B in the batter's box when we desperately need a hit. We've got 9 guys that if, bases loaded, 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th, I'm okay with that, 1 through 9 being in the batter's box. And I'm going to anticipate them to get a hit. I think that's just where we are with this roster right now. They're very offensive, and they're very reliable from top to bottom. And I think that is what is really exciting to me about this team right now in the batter's box, just their approach to the plate. Some of the years past, we haven't had that depth that we've got this year. Sometimes you look up and down the lineup and you're like, man, why is so-and-so not in? But then you look and see who is in. It's like, oh, well, that's why, because he's pretty dang good too. It's a good problem to have when you've got so much talent. And, we've got some guys that still aren't, back 100% healthy in the lineup yet that we're going to see. So there's still other options that we're going to see as this year progresses. So I think a lot to look forward to from an offensive standpoint as we enter ACC play this weekend against North Carolina.
Just to, piggyback on what you're saying, there are 13, 14, 15 guys you can run out there, and you don't bat an eye at what the substitute might be for that day, or if you're going to pinch hit somebody in a different spot, or if that day, whatever the matchup might be, you want to go, you want to, if you got a lefty pitcher, righty pitcher, you want to, match up in a certain way, whether you're doing it with the DH or, however you want to play your backup catcher. You want to get some extra outfielders in there, or you're going to play at second base. There's so many options out there, and they're all good options, and that's not normal. So just the idea, like you're saying, I mean, to be able to stretch the lineup in that way, man, what an advantage Dan has. And I've joked to them a little bit. Is it a blessing or is it a curse to have to make the lineup like that? I mean, you want to keep guys going when they're hot, but you also need to get other guys at bats to make sure they kind of stay in the flow. So good problems to have, I guess, if you're Coach McDonald.
Yeah, for sure. And, and that is challenging because you've got a hot hand and you want to stick with them. But at the same time, the guy that's, behind them or that splits time with them, you want to play them too, because you can't, burn one guy out the whole season. You've got to spread the at-bats around, because at some point in time you're going to need other guys to step up. So, like you said, it's a good problem to have, but filling out a lineup card with this many options has to be a challenging thing. And then we fast forward over to the UIC series, and we saw many, many different arms. We saw a bunch of different guys in the box. Forbes on Friday night was doing Patrick Forbes things. You could just record this and then play it like every time we record, it seems like, because Patrick Forbes is just ho-hum up there on the mound. He was electric again against the Flames. 9 strikeouts in 6 innings. He's up to, I think, 7th in the country in strikeouts with 39 through his first 4 starts. So just super impressive on the mound. Tague Davis, we're going to talk about him a lot throughout this podcast because he just continues to hate baseballs. And that's, his freshman season, he's up to 7 now, but just hit another home run on that Friday night against UIC. And Louisville ended up winning that game 10-2. I know you were there for that one. Obviously Forbes was stood out because he does every time he takes the mound. What else stood out to you from being there from your vantage point?
The Forbes thing is crazy because, like you're saying, you could just, it's rinse and repeat. It's every week. It's the same thing. But the crazy part about it is I do feel like, at least nationally, people aren't talking about him enough.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me because, we get to see him run out there every time, and maybe not everybody, national writers or whatever are not paying as much of attention. But this is the dude who got the ball, night 1 for the collegiate national team in the summer. That's how good this kid is. And he doesn't even have his full repertoire of pitches that he's going to have as his career progresses. He's still working on some things. He is not a finished product. He doesn't even have that many innings on his arm. And that's what's so amazing about him. He's able to do this. He hasn't had a full season on the mound where he's been healthy. And I think that would be the only thing about Patrick that I'm just a tiny cautious about is how does his year progress where he has, the most innings on his arm that he's going to have ever had. And I think that's something to keep an eye on, just as pitch count, innings, those type of things, just the health of his arm. He said, I did ask him about it last week. He feels good, he feels fine, but that's just something to keep an eye on because he's just not used to the labor of throwing all these innings, of being a starter. And so, but as for right now, the kid is, he's that dude. It can't be much longer until he's ACC Pitcher of the Week. He's been that good. It's just such a deep conference, somebody's out there throwing 7 innings of scoreless ball, and so. But he's that guy. He's gonna eventually win that award, you would think. But a special talent, and I feel blessed to be able to watch him every Friday night because he's that good. And as far as Tague goes, again, another special talent because what can't he do? And the knock maybe on Tague before the year started was, okay, yeah, we know the kid can hit the baseball, but what's first base look like? And man, has he been good. He's been making plays that trust me, he would not and was not making in the fall. And so to see the maturation of his game, and not just hitting wise, but kind of come full circle to where he's contributing big time on both sides of the ball, whether it be getting to baseballs, having the presence of mind to know, flip, go, take away doubles down the line. He's been awesome, man. What a fun kid to watch, and he just has so much fun playing the game too, and that's enjoyable to watch as well.
Well, and I think one of the most exciting things about him too is not only is he hitting for power, he's leading the team in home runs with 7, but I mean he's also hitting 400. And I think he struck out, 3 or 4 times. Was it the first game of the season, I believe, down in Texas? And he struck out 11 times total in the season. So, since the first game, it's really tapered off, and he's put the ball in play. That was a concern going into the season. After you watch the first game, you're just like, he's a freshman. That happens. And those numbers have significantly decreased from then. And to hit 400, second on the team in average, lead the team in home runs as a true freshman, that's pretty dang impressive. And I'm really excited to see what he's going to do this weekend as the talent's going to uptick in arms that we're going to see with North Carolina. So I'm really excited to see what Tague is going to do this weekend.
One other thing about him, that just to jump on what you just said, he's becoming a complete hitter even better, and you can see it even tonight with a runner on third and him up at the plate, and he does his job. It's not a base hit, it's a ground out, but he moves the ball over to the right side and allows the run to score, picks up the RBI. That's great baseball. And those are just, it doesn't go down as a hit, obviously does get the RBI, but just doing his job, being a professional hitter at the plate, knowing what he needs to do, and executing. It's a special bat. Can you imagine how good this kid's going to be in a couple years? It's almost probably scary to think about, to be honest.
And something like that, just as simple as that sounds, that's very mature for a guy that's in his 16th game of college baseball. A lot of freshmen that are power hitters, they want to get up there. They just want to hit the ball over the fence. Every swing is a home run swing. But you've seen that growth from him defensively and in the box. So I like you said, in a couple of years, what's this kid going to be able to do? It's going to be mighty impressive. He's one that, when you talk about putting faces on the outfield wall, I mean, Tague Davis is a kid that has that type of potential to be on the outfield wall before he leaves the University of Louisville. So let's kind of flip over to Saturday. Kind of a weird game, right? It was odd, offensively, defensively on the mound. It was just kind of a weird game. Louisville run ruled UIC 13-3, so that was the best thing that came out of it. But, Louisville got 7 hits on 13 runs. USC walked 11 batters. They hit a couple more. So it was just, Louisville just really took what the USC gave them. They didn't have to go out and do anything special, which is that's another way that Louisville's shown that they can win baseball games. They don't have to come out and overpower you. Just take what the other team gives you and, do your business and run rule them and get off the field and let's go home. Obviously Parker Detmers threw an inning, and the batter in the second inning that he faced and came out pretty quick. So don't have a full update on that yet. So we'll see what the plan is going forward with Parker. But I think the story to me was how Jack Brown came in and responded, right? Because when you're not warming up, because at that point in time, Parker had thrown 1 inning. He faced the first batter in the second inning. And you're called to come in and pitch. You haven't warmed up. You haven't thrown a single pitch in the bullpen. You've done nothing, because at that point in time, nobody's going to the bullpen in the second inning, right? So Jack Brown getting ready quickly, coming in, throwing 4 scoreless innings, striking out a couple batters, 4 just clean innings of baseball. And that's what we've seen from him. Again, we keep talking about freshmen and the maturity level, and he's another one that he's got star potential written all over him. And just to be able to come in that situation, your fellow teammate got hurt, something's going on. At that point in time, you don't know. Nobody knows what's going on. You're worried about your teammate. You're not ready to go for the game because you're not warm. And to come in and hold USC to 4 scoreless innings, I thought that showed a lot of maturity and a lot of growth from a true freshman.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. He was a star of the day, for sure. What a tough spot, like you mentioned. Just a lot of emotions in there, right? Like you just said. I mean, you never want to see a kid have to exit the game early in that way, and so you don't know what's going on. You've got to get loose, kind of in a hurry. I mean, you're allowed to take your time. Obviously, you get it an infinite. You can get the amount of time you feel like you need to warm up out there on the mound. They, hustled down there to the bullpen. He threw a few pitches down there, and he came out and got ready. And in a spot when you're, like you're saying, maybe not just like mentally, okay, I got to get ready, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's your turn. He was ready to, he was ready from the time, they tossed him the ball to let's go. I mean, he did exactly, and beyond probably anything that you could have expected from him that day. And just, a very heralded recruit, and we've talked about him on here several times already. And we're, again, another kid we're going to continue to talk about because he's that good. But the thing that's impressive about Jack to me is that he understands who he is as a pitcher. He's a guy. He's not a big strikeout guy, and he's not gonna be. But he's a guy that gets a lot of weak contact. He gets you to roll over a lot of ground balls, and he was as good as he's been here so far, and which is saying a lot because he was darn good down in Texas, and immediately when we got back. So, he seemed to have. He had maybe an outing that he would probably say wasn't his best, a couple times ago, but, he was dominant on Saturday. And like you said, as far as the runs go, UIC did us a lot of favors on Saturday. What was it, 11 walks?
It was, I think it was, 11 walks, and then I think they hit a couple too on top of that. So, I mean,
it was a parade of just, they had a really hard time finding the strike zone. And give Louisville credit. They were patient at the plate, allowed UIC to make mistakes, and capitalized on them. And that's really what the name of the game was on Saturday. Was we took what they gave us, like you mentioned, and it made with that on top of Jack Brown's stellar outing. It made for a shortened game and an early trip home on Saturday afternoon.
And that was a nice game on a Saturday because the weather was good again that day, I believe, as well. So just to, get out there to the ballpark, get an easy win, and get out of there. It's probably what the boys wanted as they headed into Sunday to prepare for the final game of the series and to sweep Illinois Chicago 5-2. Again, just another beautiful day at the ballpark Sunday was. Man, it was, I think it touched 70, 72, if I'm not mistaken. It was just perfect. The wind was barely blowing, and Peter Michael was just, man, like Patrick Forbes, like just rinse and repeat. You could just record this and we could just play it over and over. 5 innings, 8 strikeouts, didn't give up a run. On the way to, like I said, a 5-2 win over the Flames and sweep for Louisville. Again, we could hit play again. Tague Davis, another home run. That was his 5th of the year. He's up to 7 now, and his 2nd of the weekend. So that was a game that I don't think either team, besides Michael, Louisville just did what they had to do to win the baseball game. Peter Michael is exceptional on the mound, but it was just one of those days that you come in, take care of business against the team you're supposed to win, and complete the sweep and send them on about their way. What like I said, I was there that day and got to take in the beautiful weather and the sweep. What did you take away other than Michael? Because to me, he's what stood out on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and I do want to – I'm going to touch on something else here in a second, but I do want to jump on Michael again because, man, and I've said before, I love that kid. He's a great kid. He's a great pitcher. He's a better dude.
Yeah.
But after the game, the thing I took away – I mean, he and I got to nerd out just a little bit about baseball, and when he was talking me through his preparation process, I couldn't get enough of it. I mean, just the work that he does, and shout out to Michael Allman, man, and doing the work, with these guys behind the scenes to help get them ready. gets everything queued up so he can go through, and I'm sure he does it with other starters as well. But just the process of going through ahead of time, looking at guys' tendencies, looking at where they hold their hands, looking at what gets swinging. I mean, just the detail that he goes through during the week charting is. I thought it was awesome. I could have talked to him about it for a half hour, honestly. And I did get to talk to him down the line a couple nights ago again, and just kind of again nerd out with him a little bit about just the process, because that really interests me. And so just the steps that he's taking to be great, I love that stuff. And because it doesn't just happen. And to see some of the behind the scenes, and we've talked a bit before about, he's had this adversity and whatever, and maybe that has helped him want to take more advantage of the opportunities that he does have. But who could have, when he commits, who could have thought that it would go like this? Probably not even him, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Probably not even Roger or Coach Mack. It's been outstanding so far. And however it plays out the rest of the year, hopefully it continues on this path. That would be amazing. But not every outing is going to be a stellar outing. I think we all know that. And so as you get into conference play, you're not going to throw, like you did against Arizona or like you did against USC every time out. But we've got an experienced, proven arm on the mound that behind the scenes is doing all the work. I love that, man. You can't ask for anything more from a Sunday dude. That is for sure. I know, however it shakes out with Parker, is there a spot open for a little bit or for the remainder of the year? We'll figure all that out as the season progresses. I think he likes throwing on Sunday, though, just if you're talking about moving guys around and however that works out. I know he loves Sunday. He likes the routine and getting to see guys on Friday and on Saturday ahead of his start. So that was kind of something we talked about earlier in the week. And so, but man, what another great start. He was awesome. Obviously the home run from Tague, but late in that game when it was still a little tight in there, the big hit from Monroe again. Mm-hmm. And man, there's so many good hitters on this team, but right now, I don't think anyone's seen it as good as he is. Mm-mm. And it's not always a homer. It's not always a double. It's not always this power shot to a gap or anything like that. But he finds holes, man. He's just a professional hitter. And you couldn't, in the 5 spot in the lineup, absolutely perfect dude. That's the dude you want coming up in that type of spot, and he delivered again.
And you talk, and this wasn't on Sunday, but you talk about a guy, that's just hitting the baseball well right now. He's not an everyday guy, but Bayram Hot, I can't remember which game it was this past week. I think he had 3 at bats where his exit velo was over 100.
Was it Saturday?
It may have been Saturday. But
Friday.
It was Friday. Okay. I would say it was over the weekend. I didn't think it was Sunday, but he's not getting cheated in the box at all. So, that dude is hitting the baseball. And it just goes to show, that's a guy we haven't even talked about on this podcast tonight. And just 1 through 9, 1 through 14, like you talked, 1 through 15, like you mentioned earlier. There's guys all up and down this lineup in the dugout that are, when their number's called, they're just going to produce. That's what we've seen. So I think this weekend was no exception. This week against Lipscomb and Oakland, which we'll hop over into just a minute, were the same thing. But I do want to touch on something. You were talking about Michael, and you got the chance to kind of nerd out with him a little bit. Just be careful with that. He's a Northwestern guy, right? You don't want to nerd out against a Northwestern. You're not going to win that battle very often.
So that's funny that you say that, because when I was talking to him earlier in the week, I was going through and talking to him about, what did he pick Louisville over? Where else was he thinking about? And obviously knowing that he had gone to Northwestern, you already know, obviously, the grades are not an issue.
Right.
But some of the other schools that he was talking to were like Cal, Stanford. I mean, the guy's, I don't need to get into any kind of academic anything. First off, I don't need to get into any kind of academic anything with most people, but especially with him. That's not going to end well for me. That's for sure.
And we've talked about it before on here. When he committed, his numbers at Northwestern, I think his ERA was in the 14s or 15s. And I talked to a couple of people that know a lot more about pitching than I do, and they're like, "Man, the stuff is there. Like he's got it." And a lot of it is just, coaching and preparation and the situation you're put in. So, and then he goes up and does what he does in summer ball, and you can obviously see that's carried over into this season. So it's just good to see, and it's a feel-good story, right? You've got a guy that struggles, but the stuff is there. Good dude, just, wrong seat. He's at the wrong place. Get him to the right place, and look what happens. And hopefully this is a step that can kind of propel his career if that's the path that he chooses to take.
And I think it speaks volumes too. And this goes, this could be applied to any job situation or just any relationship that you have, or whether it's friendships, whether it's spouse, anything like that, is what it does for somebody to know that people believe in you. And that's what he has here. Roger Williams believes in him, and trusts him, and he knows that. And that will take somebody so far, just knowing that you're trusted, that they know you can do it. And I don't think he had that at some of his previous stops. And so, like I said, whether you're a boss at a company and you need to impart some of that to your workers, or whether you're a worker and you might need some of that, I'm sure all of us have been in situations like that where you felt like, oh man, I wish, at this job, I mean, what do they say, right? Most people quit managers, not their job, right? And so, and that can be the same in sports. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there are life lessons. That's the greatest part about sports, right? Is that you can learn a lot about life and adversity and things like that. And that's something that he is clearly doing here. And so I think that's pretty awesome. He talks so much. He talks glowingly about Roger and the belief that he has in him. And so I know I talk about this dude every week on this podcast, and he's been a revelation. But I do want to touch on Bayram again, just because you had mentioned it. We've said before on here how Michael Lippy is built like a linebacker, and you almost think is that dude? He is a very good baseball player, obviously, but when you just see him athletically, you think, is that dude even playing the right game? Could he have been? Did he miss his calling almost as a? Should he be playing at Cardinal Stadium? But Bayram Hot is that type of physical. He's not as fast as Lippy is, but just in terms of raw power, raw strength. Those are the two dudes. Obviously Davis as well, and there are, we could go down the line. Obviously, there are other guys that can hit the baseball, in that way really hard like that with those exit velos. But that's not an aberration. Him hitting the baseball like that. That's how he hits it. He stays back on it, and that dude can drive the baseball.
Yeah, he's a big dude, and you can tell. Just his lower body is so big, and that's where all that strength is coming from, because a lot of people don't realize baseball, that's where a lot of your strength comes from. So, just his lower body strength, that's where he is able to drive the ball and get the exit velos above 100 like that.
And I do, you mentioning that is a great way for me to just jump in and say really quick. You can tell this year the strength and conditioning program. It's a new strength and conditioning coordinator, and I'm super sorry. His name is escaping me right now, and I apologize for that. But this is a new deal, and it's every single thing in that weight room for every kid. It's very individualized for kids that are playing a little bit more. They might, you're not going to need to do quite as much on a certain day. If you've been, if you're playing more every other day, it's going to be a different way. If it's, everything is is set up for the individual instead of like group. And I don't know if you're looking up the name, and I don't. But you can tell the difference on these kids. I mean, some of these freshmen that have come in, like they look like completely different kids than what they did when they showed up in July, and so it's paying dividends. And you can tell. You talked about the lower body strength, and I mean, these dudes are getting after it in the weight room, and you can really tell. And again, whatever the name is, I'm ultra sorry that I'm forgetting it, but that dude is earning his money for sure, because it's paying off big time.
You can tell just by watching the team from the stands, like they just look more imposing than they have in previous years. So,
and I know he's from. They grabbed him from Tulane, and
that's right. He came from Tulane. I know that.
Came from Tulane, and I'm pretty positive that the last name starts with a D, and I don't want to just guess and not be right, but that dude's earning his money. And whatever, however the situation was that they came to make a change, they grabbed the right guy, and it's showing up, just in the development of the kids' bodies, but also it's paying off on the field. Yeah. And so that's been a little bit of maybe that guy's a little bit of an unsung hero so far for the program so far this year.
Well, let's flip over to the couple of midweek games. This is one of those weeks that we had two. First one was against Lipscomb, which has kind of been a thorn in our side a little bit over the past couple of years. I think we were 2-2 against them the last 4 games we've played, but things were a little different this year. It was a Bison beatdown the other night, 13-0 in 7 innings. Louisville, just from start to finish, really just took control of the game. Really didn't give Lipscomb many opportunities to get any momentum whatsoever. We talked about this going into this week. It was a bullpen day. I think we saw 7 pitchers, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, over the 7 innings, maybe 6. So just saw a bunch of different arms, a bunch of fresh arms that, don't see a ton of action. And then we got to see Tucker at the end throw the final game just kind of as a bullpen for him to prepare for the weekend. So good to see him out there. Had a couple home runs from Klein, Tague Davis again. I think Alisea was a home run shy of the cycle, so he should have saved his home run for this week, but it was just a fun game. You got to see a bunch of different guys get in on the mound, a bunch of different guys get at bats or play defense, just because the lopsided victory. So those games are fun to me as a fan. They kind of get boring over time because it's the same thing over, Louisville just winning 13-0. But on the flip side of that, it's good to see these other guys, because we don't get to see them in game action a ton. So it's fun to see those guys, get out and play in game action against somebody other than Louisville. So I was kind of shocked. I saw Lipscomb's record going into the game, but they've been really good the past couple years. But I was kind of shocked at the product that they had, and maybe it was just a bad night for them. I don't know, but I know they're 4-11, so they don't really have a record to support. Otherwise, that could change as they get into conference play. But I was expecting a little bit more of a game on Tuesday, but I'm glad it ended the way it did.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously, like you mentioned, they've given us a pretty hard time the last few years. I think they have a couple wins, and I think we may have even rallied to beat them another time. Yeah. And so they've, kind of had our number a little bit. I think I joked the last time on the podcast, like, we think about not scheduling them anymore. But much like you, these type of games, I look forward to those almost as much as I do, like these big, high-profile matchups with a Carolina or a Florida State or a Clemson or somebody like that, because I love seeing some of these kids get opportunities that don't always get an opportunity. So, whether it be, especially kids, it was fun to see maybe in their second go-around, especially on the mound. I'm always interested to see how a kid bounces back if it hasn't been his, best stuff the first time. So I think Jake Schweitzer got four straight outs, last night. So happy for him, a local kid. So he gets in and out. Eberle comes right in, gets two right away again. We know he's been great. Awesome to get Tucker out there again. I mean, not a high pressure situation or anything like that, but just get him back on the right track. No one has I don't think anybody's worried about Tucker's stuff or anything like that. Look, Tucker needs to have feel on his off-speed stuff, and on some of these really cold days, it's going to be really hard for him to grip and feel the baseball the same. And I think that's a lot of what we've seen early in the year, where it's cold. He doesn't quite have the feel for that sinker. And if you don't have the feel for it, it's going to stay up. And if it's staying up, it's getting hit. And that's really just what's happened. So as the weather gets a little better, like I said, we've mentioned on here before again, but no one's worried about Tucker's stuff or what his year is going to end up like. It's been a couple outings. I'm sure he would want them to be a little bit better. He looked much more like himself yesterday, and we're right back on schedule with him. Couldn't be more excited for the way this bullpen is kind of shaping up for the rest of the year.
And one thing to touch on Tucker, and not just Tucker, because we know the stuff's there. We know what type of pitcher he is. But when you're a closer, if you have an outing that you give up a couple runs, you don't throw enough innings for your numbers to come down as quickly as, let's say, a starter, right? Like, he may throw an inning or two or three a week, where, if you're a starter, you're going to throw 6, 7, 8 innings a week. So if you give up a run or two, it's not going to impact you as quick, because, you're going to throw another 6 or 7 innings next week, where Tucker, he just doesn't have the opportunity to throw as many innings to lower those numbers. So I don't have any concerns. Like you said, just to echo that sentiment about Tucker, we know what he's got. We know the stuff's there. I think you got a really good point talking about the cold weather. So as that changes, the temperature increases, I don't have any concerns with what Tucker's going to do at the back end of our bullpen whatsoever.
And he's such a bulldog. Like, his mentality, he's able to shelve that and get right back to the next day. That's why he's the perfect closer, because he has that mentality. I know Major League Baseball is a little bit different now than it was back when I was growing up, but when you would get to that closer, right? Now everybody, there's openers and there's all kinds of different things, but the closer would come in and is it Hoffman in San Diego, and is it Rivera, whoever these guys are, it's their stuff, but it's the mentality as much as it is the stuff. And he has that makeup where, when he's running out to the mound, I mean, I said bulldog earlier, and I don't even hardly know how to say it any better than that, because he's out there, he's so competitive. That's the dude. That's the dude you want out there, and I think that's why it doesn't matter if he has a couple outings or whatever. They're going to keep giving him the baseball, and he's going to come through for you. So, yeah, no qualms about his stuff in any way.
As far as being the dude to be a makeup of what a closer looks like, Michael Kirian was kind of like that too, right? He was physically imposing. He just, he's a bulldog. He had that makeup of what a closer would look like, feel like, the attitude, the mentality, how he approached the mound. I think Tucker has a lot of those same qualities. So yeah, I think he's the dude that's going to be the back end of the bullpen, and I mean, he's going to get the ball thrown to him. It is what it is, and he's going to do a fine job, and he's going to do what Tucker does. So I have no concerns there whatsoever. Let's flip over and talk about the game tonight, or I guess last night, because we are approaching 2:00 in the morning now, against Oakland. That was another fun one, right? Louisville was down 5-3, and scored the final 10 runs to win 13-5. It's just another bullpen day, like we had talked about, in 9 innings. We saw about 8 different pitchers, if I'm not mistaken. A couple guys like you'd mentioned that kind of their second outing, maybe their third outing since they've been here. And it's kind of good to see, because the first time you're out there, you're so nervous, right? Like, it's the first time you've been on a college mound, like trying to dust off the cobwebs. Like, there's a lot going through your mind mentally. There's a lot of emotions attached to that. So the second time out and how they bounce back is exciting. So we got to see some of those guys out tonight. Davis again hit another home run. Monroe, him and Monroe went back to back. Baker hit just a moonshot to left center field. He destroyed that baseball. So it was good to see him get out there and get some swings. As just another option behind the plate, or as a DH, or however they want to use him going forward, or what that kind of looks like for George Baker, because I'm a big fan of his game defensively. So it was good to see him have that offensive approach as well. Again, we've said it, another beautiful night at the ballpark. Like, it was just the weather today was incredible, and hopefully that carries to the weekend, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what did you think about the approach tonight? Because, we're down, give up 4 runs in the 4th inning. And, you start to feel everybody on social media, oh, here we go, here's the bullpen. You start feeling those things, and it's like, man, like, this team, 16 games in, like, we haven't shown any glimpse of that. That's how this season is going to be, right? Like, previous years, if you want to say that, we've seen some of that, right? But this year's team, the bullpen has not been that team. So, give them some grace. A lot of these guys that are out there, this is the second, third time they've pitched collegiately. And then Louisville offensively did what they did to bounce back and win this one big against Oakland. Other than that, what are kind of your takeaways from what you saw tonight against Oakland?
Yeah, you mentioned some more of the young arms, and with some of the guys' first outing being on that Saturday down in Texas, that's a tough spot, right? I mean, you've fallen behind a little bit, and you're running out there, major league stadium, really high quality opponent. That's got to be about as nerve-wracking of an environment to make your first appearance on the mound in college in. And so it was really good. I think Jake Greger had a 1-2-3 inning tonight. Alex Gay again, another kid that runs out, gets a 1-2-3 inning. There were, I think at one point, Louisville had retired 10 in a row. There through the middle innings, it kind of just was able to steady the ship there after falling behind. And so offensively, I believe, did Garrett Pike have 3 doubles tonight?
He had 3 doubles. I was going to mention that when you were done. Yeah, he had 3 doubles tonight.
Yeah, I think his first 3 at bats, he had 3 doubles, and then he followed with a single. So I mean, he's the last 4, 5, 6 days has just been as hot at the plate as anybody. Just really seeing the baseball well. It's got to be looking like a beach ball to him up there. So he was great again. I believe Monroe. We could talk about Monroe about every single game. That's just the way he's able to just stay back on the baseball and just it's just so fun to watch. You'd mentioned Baker and just the makeup, that bomb. I mean, you and I were talking just a little bit before. He had mentioned to me afterwards he knew he got every stitch of that baseball. And that was a great way to put it from him, because that was exactly what it looked like from my point of view. So, but again, not just the play, but the arm, man.
The
arm. The dude's got an absolute cannon for an arm. He cut down 3 dudes trying to steal. And, I was joking. Dan talked after the game about, when he had looked at some of the numbers headed into the game, he said, he thought he was aggressive and that Louisville was aggressive on the base paths. But what Oakland has done this year on the base paths makes Louisville look like they're not even trying to steal bases. So he knew they were going to be aggressive, and I kind of joked with George after the game, did they not know the scouting report about your arm or whatever? And he said, look, I don't know if they knew the report about my arm or not, but they know, they know now. He taught it to him. So it didn't matter whether he was cutting dudes down at second base. He got a dude, threw back behind a batter and cut a guy down at third. I mean, it was almost funny after the first time to think that they were going to continue to try to run on him, but they did, and he made him pay for it. I will say this about Oakland doing that. You kind of got the feeling that they understood that they needed to keep scoring and they needed to keep, try to keep the pressure on. And to George's credit, he kept throwing darts. And, they're going to make him throw a dart, and he kept throwing them. And so, just massive credit to him because he has not gotten quite as many opportunities behind the plate so far this year as kind of, I know they're kind of jostling for backup catcher role, and he hasn't probably gotten as many opportunities as Tague has because he hasn't been quite as offensive. But boy, he had it tonight. That bat. I mean, it was a 1-for-4 night. It was a big hit, and we needed it at that time. And then obviously the arm plays, which everybody knew coming in, right? I mean, that's where that dude's going to make his hay, and so that was a special night for him. Really excited for him.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's one of those games that, as a player, you kind of put some pressure on your coaches now, right? Like, hey, coach, I may need more innings. I may need more at bats now. So I'm curious to see how they're going to approach that going forward. Because, like you said, Tagger's kind of been the second guy behind Klein. So we'll see how Baker's used going forward because, I mean, he didn't skip a beat there tonight. He, like you said, the arm, if he can display that bat every time he goes, you don't have to hit a home run like that every time, but, make solid contact, move the baseball. I mean, there's a spot for him in the lineup if that's the case. So just really happy to see that progression from him and kind of curious to see how they're going to handle that going forward.
And Coach McDonald talks a lot about the competitiveness within the group and whether it's the outfield group or the infield. But really specifically, he mentions the catchers a lot because, how they are, not just jostling for time with each other, but, it's got to be hard sometimes for some of these guys to see somebody else get some time that you might want, in that backup catcher role. He made mention tonight that when George hit that home run, Coach Mack said the first person up and that was cheering the loudest was Tague Tyson on the bench. And again, we made mention of it maybe last time out or maybe it was the time before that, but about how when Nate Early hits that home run and how excited everybody was in the dugout for him to just pop up and get that big hit. Like, that's the best part about this group. And when I talked with George after the game tonight and just talked to him about the everyday stuff, what's going on, he said that group, he said whether it's we're competing, we're doing pop times, whether we're playing ping pong, whether we're playing pool, he said it doesn't matter. It's all competition. It's all, that's just the way the group is. And that's what's making them better. And so when you begin to look down the line of, Matt Klein going to be a pro, next year, well, you got to feel like the catcher group is in really good hands because you've got these two guys already. You've got Mowry still on there, so you've got a really good freshman coming in as well, and I think there's a JUCO. So, I mean, there's just the group is so fun. It's so full. I mean, a lot of people, is it catcher U? Is it not? I think maybe Georgia Tech wants to be catcher U or we catcher U. So, but whether it is or isn't, this program produces catchers. And guys want to come here and catch for that reason. And so, man, he put on display tonight. I mean, anything you could have wanted from a catcher, he had it tonight. And the group has given it to you as a whole for the whole year so far.
Yeah, I mean, if you can talk about, collective groups on this roster right now, the catching group, I mean, they've held their own. I mean, they've been one of the best groups on the roster. So having another bat, have another defensive option like that in Baker just makes us that much stronger. And you kind of touched on a little bit just how close this group is. We talked about it after the opening weekend down in Texas. Coach Mack, Lucas Moore, everybody after all their press conferences after the game, it was all about love and just, how much these dudes love each other. And it shows. Like you said, the guy that you're competing for innings or at bats against is the first one to cheer you on when you get a big hit. And that just goes to show how much they care about each other. And I think that's why we're seeing the results that we're seeing on the field. So that stuff carries over. So it's good to see, and hopefully that carries over into this weekend, because it's ACC is here. It's here now. We've got North Carolina, who's number, I believe, 6 this weekend. They are 15-2. They were undefeated going into this past weekend until they ran into Stanford, and they lost their opening series of 8 in the ACC, which is still weird to say that Stanford's in the ACC, but nonetheless, here we are. And Stanford wasn't ranked at the time. They've catapulted into the rankings since then. But North Carolina dropped the series against the Cardinal. So Louisville's getting the number 6 team in the country. We're going to have 3 opportunities for quad 1 wins. That's where these games are going to be. That's where they are now. And come the end of the season, these are going to be 3 quad 1 games. So huge, massive opportunity. I think it's a good measuring stick. We've had a measuring stick down in Texas, so we kind of got to stack up against 3 really good teams. But these ones seem to carry a little bit more weight, and they matter a little more just because they are conference games. So schedule-wise for the weekend, Friday at 6, Saturday at 2, and Sunday is a little bit later this weekend because it's at 3 because it's the ACC network game. So that won't be televised. You don't have to do any streaming or any of that fun stuff. And that'll probably lead you right into Selection Sunday. So catch the Cards against the Tar Heels and then switch over to catch the Selection Sunday to see where the Louisville basketball team lands. So big weekend ahead. That's the schedule now. Friday 6, Saturday 2, Sunday 3. Would not surprise me one bit if that may get altered some way because there's a threat for tornadoes and storms and stuff. So keep an eye. That could change a tad depending on when that weather hits, if that weather hits.
So just real quick, just to jump in, just because you were mentioning it, I did ask the SID today about if there's been any talk about the schedule altering, and I'm sure they will probably have made an announcement potentially before this podcast comes out, but it does look like we're going to try to play 2 on Friday, just with the way the weather's looking like on Saturday, and it makes obviously way more sense to do it on Friday and not wait in case something moves into Sunday, but also the weather on Friday looks really good, so that's the right day to play 2, and so I believe that it has not been officially announced, but potentially by the time people are listening to this, they'll have already put something out. But that's the way it looks like it's going to go, is 2 on Friday.
I was anticipating that happening because I saw, I think Western did the same already, and they announced it. I believe it was earlier today, just because they're kind of in the same zone that we are for the anticipated weather. So get 2 out of the way on Friday, and then play the finale on Sunday. So. Good catch there, Terry. Appreciate you looking into that and get that info for us.
One other schedule. I'm sorry. I also did ask. I'm really sorry. I did also ask him about the Xavier game and the possibility to make it up because it's still listed as a postponed, but nothing officially announced yet. But also that looks like that one is probably not going to work out. Just. Not really any spots to work it in that work for both teams, and so that really, it's not been officially canceled, but that unfortunately looks like the way that one's going to end up, which again, really unfortunate because I believe right now I think they were the number 2 RPI team at least entering the day.
Yeah, they're number 2.
Yeah, so number 2. So would have been a great opportunity to get a really good RPI type game in and potential win, but I think that one's going to go by the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd love to get that game in just because it's another quad win. Right now it's a quad win. That one could potentially fall a tad just because once they get into conference play, that's going to change. Their schedule has been just a gauntlet, so that could change. But North Carolina, that's going to probably remain a quad one game. The three game series will. So looking over at North Carolina, right now they're 27th in the country in ERA at 3.51. It's pretty strong. So that's kind of typical of a Scott Forbes team. They're typically very strong on the mound. They always have been. I love the series when we play with them. They're very competitive. UNC always has a good team. They've been to the College World Series a couple times the past few years. So they always bring a good team. I hated when they had Osuna on the roster because I feel like every time he stepped in the box, he hit home run against us. But we don't have to worry about him anymore. When you kind of look at the teams, I think I was looking at stats. Louisville and North Carolina, they're very, very comparable when you look at metrics. I think the two teams are very complementary of one another. I would say at this point in the season, Louisville's probably more offensive than UNC is. UNC's probably a little bit stronger on the mound as a whole at this point. So I think it's going to be a pretty competitive weekend because, our strength is their weakness and vice versa. So I think it's going to be a good weekend for us to kind of see how we stack up against a really good opponent. And, this is an opportunity like we talked about earlier. Louisville's ranked in the Baseball America poll, and rankings at this point in the season don't mean everything, but it means how well you're playing. But if you beat North Carolina this weekend, you're going to be ranked in every poll. It is what it is. So that's kind of what's on the line against UNC this year. And I haven't got to watch them a ton. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see them much. Just kind of give us your overall thoughts of the weekend against North Carolina.
So, just like you did use earlier when talking about them before I interrupted you. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Talk about the schedule things, but before I interrupted, you had made mention. You used the phrase "measuring stick," and I thought that was interesting because that was actually the exact phrase I used to pose a question to Coach McDonald about it tonight. Of you get a little bit of a measuring stick this weekend, just kind of see where you're at, and he said. He's going to deflect and say, it's another, it's every ACC weekend is a tough week, which is not a lie. That is true. There's no off week in the ACC. But, when you're playing in, you want to parse it and say it's the first or the second best conference in America. Either way, it's brutal, right? The 10-week gauntlet, it's brutal. And to start off with one of the preseason favorites right away, it is a measuring stick. Mm-hmm. Now, he's not going to say that, and they, maybe they don't want to look at it that way, but to a fan or whatever else, that is what this is. And this is a team, like you've said, in a program who they always have pitchers, always. Mm-hmm. And it's not just starters. They always have bullpen arms, and there's, much like, again, you would expect from a top 10 program, they've got dudes everywhere. When we just going into the series, I really look forward to, on opposing rosters, I want to see top talent. I enjoy seeing how we measure up against top talent. And so you get, presumably, at least on draft boards, you've got the number one college catcher in America behind the plate for North Carolina, and this dude is durable. I think he caught all but like 1 or 2 games last year as a redshirt freshman. I think it's fun to kind of get to, you get Matt Klein, and Matt Klein is no slouch. And so just kind of getting to see two of the best catchers in the ACC, behind the plate against each other matched up. Let's get a look at what do we weren't as offensive down in Texas as we have been the last 3 weeks when we saw some more elite arms. And so let's see what type of adjustments we've made this week when we see some more elite arms come in here. Are we going to be scoring 13 runs a game here? Probably not. But again, just as their, strength might be pitching and not as much hitting, I feel pretty comfortable with what we are throwing on the mound as well. We talked about Forbes, we talked about Michael, and whoever you're going to run out there on Saturday, is it going to be Jack Brown? Is it going to be Cutts? It's probably going to be one of those two guys. And it may be those guys back-to-back. I have no idea, depending on how Friday goes. I said Saturday, but it's probably, double
second game, yeah.
But depending on how the first game goes, how the second game shapes up bullpen-wise, that's the key for this team this weekend is can we get quality starts to be able to kind of, I don't want to say get away with, but like not have to worry as much about the fact that our regular Saturday starter is probably not going to be an option. So just the two ways to look at it for me are, we've got Forbes, right? So I don't care who you're throwing. I feel good about that, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't care if it's Arnold from Florida State. If we've got Patrick Forbes, it's all. I mean, at the worst, it's even Steven. So, and when you flip it around for our hitters, we talked about the lineup. Everyone's seeing the ball really good right now, and let's see what it looks like again once we see an elite arm. But I feel really good about the matchup that we have this weekend. Obviously helps that it's at home. And, look, I know everyone's going to be excited. Hopefully the boys win tomorrow night, right, in the basketball so that they can advance to Friday. So will it pull some people away? It's a beautiful day on Friday. Will it pull some people away from the ballpark that they want to stay home and watch the boys play basketball? It might. It probably will. Are there going to be people with their phones out, at the baseball park watching some basketball? There might be if it's a later tip. Keep your volume turned down. I don't need to hear the basketball game, but no, I'm not really kidding. But no, it's an exciting series, one to look forward to, and it's like you said, if Louisville wants to compete for an ACC championship, like that's their stated goal, this is a good opening weekend to measure yourself and see, how is this going to look, going forward in the next 9 weeks following that.
You talk about our pitching, and one of the things that really stuck out to me looking over North Carolina and kind of just their approach, they are top 15 in the country right now in walks. They have drawn 107 walks already this season, which is just shy of 6.5 per game. So they're going to be patient in the box. So our pitchers, you're going to have to throw strikes. They're not going to chase anything. You're going to have to hit your spots because this team is very disciplined in the just by looking at those numbers, you can tell they're not going to chase anything. You're going to have to throw strikes to these guys and let your defense play behind you. So I think that's one thing that we really have to minimize as much as we possibly can. We can't give this team anything. When you play a top 6 team in the country, you can't give away anything. We've really got to hone in on that this weekend.
And that's something that this pitching staff has been great at.
They have. Yes, they have.
Really, really good. I mean, just jumping off the top of my head, I know Peter Michael threw like 67% the other night, and he's always in the zone. Forbes is always in the zone. Cuts, I mean, these guys are locked in on just pounding the zone. Like you said, look, you would rather I don't want to say you want a guy to hit it, but I mean, you would rather, let's take our chances with a batted ball versus a walk or any kind of free pass. These dudes are pounding the zone, and that honestly is the main difference right now between this year's staff and last year's staff, is just limiting the walks. If you can get those first, and especially get the, let's throw first pitch strikes. This boils down to, again, just like we talked about in preseason before we went to Texas. Let's throw first pitch strikes. Let's get the first batter out, and your numbers go through the roof in terms of trying to, hold teams, throw zeros up on the board as a pitching staff.
Yeah, I just pulled the numbers up since you were talking about how this team has really thrown strikes. We've only walked 57, which is right at 4 a game, and they're drawing 6.5 a game. So something's got to give. So like you said, just pound the strike zone, throw strikes, let the guys behind you work. That's what they're there for. And we've been pretty good about that. I think they've been pretty consistent. So I don't think that'll be an issue, but I think it's something to monitor as the weekend progresses, just to make sure that these guys really are pumping the zone.
And the defense behind, there have been some errors on this team so far this year, but Dan's made mention of it a couple different times, and he's been right about it. Most of the errors are just goofy. They're throws over to first base. There's a drop ball by a pitcher, a bobble ball, a weird toss home, pick up, whatever it may be. They're just kind of some weird things from the mound. We haven't made many errors actually out in the field too much. And so I feel very comfortable about the defense behind. That outfield can go and get it with I'd put those dudes up against anybody in the country in terms of all three dudes being able to go get the baseball. And then, look, the knock on Jake Monroe coming in was, okay, everyone knows that he can hit, but can he pick it? Yes, he can. Undeniably. He makes tough plays look routine. He can throw from all different arm slots. He's been great. Look, Alex Alisea at shortstop. Yes, is he the biggest guy? Of course not. But he gets to balls that he has no business getting to.
That play that he made on Sunday, that ball that was hit pretty hard up the middle, he dove, stood up, and threw the guy out by probably a step and a half and had no business getting to the baseball. I was stunned. And you talk about defense. We talked about this a little bit earlier too. Garrett Pike in the outfield has been exceptional. He's made a couple diving plays. He's had a handful of outfield assists. I mean, I was really looking forward to his bat just because, he's the Toledo single-season home run leader. He's the all-time home run leader at Toledo. So I was looking forward to his bat. But, man, defensively, I have been thoroughly impressed with him. So just another guy out there. But, yeah, the defense behind them, they'll work. Just let them work. Let them do their thing.
Yeah, you made mention of that play, Alisea. Just the frame of mind that he has defensively. Like, if everything's happening so fast, but he seems to be able to, his mind seems to be able to slow the game down for him. He made a play last week where where the ball was bouncing to him, where he held his foot on the second base bag to grab the baseball and get the first out and then fire it back over because he knew he wasn't going to have any other way to make a double play, and he's able to double him up. That play was so... I could not have made a bigger deal about that play than I wanted to, and I felt like it just almost got glossed over because he just made it look like so routine.
Yeah.
The running catches he's made back over his shoulder. He makes that insane catch in Texas, running into the wall. There's nothing that dude can't do at shortstop.
You talk about, guys, power hitters that just have easy power. And Alisea is that way with the glove. It just looks so smooth and easy to him. I know there's a lot more that goes into it, and it's a lot more difficult than you make it sound, or than I make it sound, but it just looks so natural to him. Like it looks like it's almost effortless because he's so smooth with the glove.
And yeah, it's crazy to think, like, with how talented he is and how he's able, again, he's not a big guy, and so you would think that his range is not going to be what you would prototypically think of a shortstop being, but he gets to balls that other guys can't get to. And as far as Pike goes, yeah, the diving catch the other night was stupid, just absolutely ridiculous. He's made a couple, like you said. There was a one earlier in the year that he caught and spun and threw a seed to third base to get a guy. He can do everything. And as far as this coming weekend goes, I asked Pike and I asked Monroe tonight. I asked Pike earlier in the week, and these guys said this. These games coming, North Carolina, these type of games. That's why they came here. For weekends like this coming up, they wanted to be on the big stage. They wanted to play against the best players in the country and be able to prove themselves. That's why they're here. And, these dudes have done it so far for the year. They're both on fire right now. Just really looking forward to the weekend for sure.
Well, hopefully we can keep this momentum carrying forward this weekend with the doubleheader likely on Friday, and then the finale on Sunday. So hopefully Louisville can get a couple wins and take the series and kind of set the tone for this season going into conference play before they head down to Blacksburg, if I'm not mistaken, for the second weekend of conference play. So we'll be back next week, same place, hopefully not the same time as we approach 2:30 in the morning. Wanted to catch the Oakland game this week for everybody and kind of talk through it. So we'll be back next week to recap the North Carolina series and talk about Virginia Tech and how they fare this weekend, and get us prepped for that series in Blacksburg as well that, Terry, I know you'll be heading down to. So excited to hear your experience down there. But in the meantime, before we get back behind the mics next week, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at InsideVilleBSB, VILLEBSB. Also, just quick shout out, because I know it'll have already started by the time we get back behind the mic next week. But high school baseball, man, can't wait for it. Next Monday kicks off here in Kentucky, so I've got 2 games to get to next week to see some commits next week. So I'm gonna get out and see Trinity and South Oldham. Then I'm gonna get out and see Eastern later in the week. So I think I'm gonna be able to see 5 or 6 different commits right away next week. Kids are already, juniors and seniors, so just really excited for that. And so look for some of that, some video on that. You can always find the post-game interviews at Inside Louisville Baseball on YouTube. And yeah, man, just excited for high school baseball, but really excited for this weekend against North Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in the Louisville metro area that watches more baseball games than you do. From college to high school, you take it all in, and you post a lot of it on your Twitter feed and on your YouTube page. So go give Terry a like, give him a follow. You can find us on Twitter at Third Central Pod. You can find me at Matt Sefcovic. We'll be updating through the weekend, hopefully bring a couple of wins against North Carolina, and hopefully everybody stays safe with the weather that they say may be coming in this weekend. We'll be back behind the mics to recap the weekend, prepare you for next weekend against Virginia Tech. But in the meantime, in the words of Sean Moth, we will see you at the ballpark.